The moment I saw it move, I knew it wasn't dust. I had been staring at the electrical outlet on the kitchen wall for nearly 5 minutes, not because I expected anything strange to happen, but because something had been watching me, and I couldn't explain why I knew that. Then it twitched. Just slightly. A shadow, no bigger than a grain of rice, recoiled back into the narrow slit of plastic. I thought my mind was playing tricks on me, until it peeked out again. A head. Oval-shaped. Smooth. With 2 black, glassy eyes staring back at me from inside my own kitchen wall. And then it waved. Not erratically. Not randomly. It raised its arm in a precise, intentional arc, like a soldier signaling across enemy lines. That's when I dropped my coffee. The mug shattered, and for a split second, the kitchen felt like a war zone. My heart pounded. My ears rang. But when I looked again, it was still there. Watching. Waiting. I had just made contact with a sentient being, 1 centimeter tall. Now I know what you're thinking. This sounds like something out of a child's imagination, a bizarre hallucination, or maybe some fever dream after too much late-night sci-fi. But this happened. And not just once. For 7 years, I kept this secret. I fed it. I talked to it. I even built tools to help it communicate. But the story doesn't start in the kitchen. It starts in the lab. More specifically, a classified project under the Department of Quantum Biological Surveillance. A program so secret even most of its funders didn't know what they were paying for. I was a field engineer, specializing in radiation pattern anomalies in consumer electronics. Yes, that's a thing. You'd be surprised how often phones, routers, and even electric toothbrushes pick up strange data that has nothing to do with human use. We usually blamed solar storms, stray signals, manufacturing defects. Until 2015, when we intercepted a non-random, encrypted pattern coming from a private residence in upstate New York. The device was a toaster, but it wasn't the toaster that was emitting the signal, it was what had crawled inside it. That's where I first saw the data signature, pulsed microwaves, repeating every 3.14 seconds, layered with a harmonic frequency that matched no known communication protocol. It was deliberate, intelligent, and spatially specific. The signal adjusted depending on who was nearby. We tracked it for months. Then it went dark, until I moved into this house 2 years later, and realized the signal hadn't vanished. It had followed me. The thing in my wall, I called it Karu, didn't speak, at least not audibly. But it learned language through patterns. Morse, ASCII, binary pulses in light. I taught it letters using a laser pointer and a modified IR sensor. Within months, Karu was spelling words back at me using light flashes. Simple at first. Hi. Safe. Food. Then more complex. Watch. They know. Hiding. It told me it wasn't alone. Karu came from a planet smaller than Pluto, orbiting a dim white dwarf, where gravity was 12 times stronger than Earth's. Life there had adapted by becoming extremely small, dense, and fast. When one of their exploration crafts intercepted a solar probe from Earth in 1972, they followed the signal back. But they couldn't land openly. We were too large, too hostile. So they infiltrated through machines, devices, power sources, anything humming with steady electromagnetic rhythm. Karu was one of the scouts. Only 1.1 centimeters tall, his body was crystalline yet flexible, capable of surviving massive temperature shifts. His limbs were jointed like an insect's, but his eyes were unlike anything I'd seen. Twin mirrors reflecting more than just light, they reflected intent. Karu told me that his people once thought humans were gods, until they saw what we did to our own. Your planet is beautiful, he once blinked in Morse. But your species is loud. Loud. Destructive. Predictable. And yet he stayed. Why? I didn't know, until the day the ceiling fan killed him. It was a freak accident. He had been climbing along the cord of a pendant lamp in the living room, trying to signal something at the top. I wasn't watching. The fan turned on. The vacuum of air sucked him upward. I heard the tiniest snap, and he dropped into the carpet, motionless. I cried for an hour. I buried a being no bigger than my fingernail in a velvet ring box beneath the maple tree out back. I thought that was the end, until the next night, when another one showed up. It looked identical, but this one didn't wave. It spoke. It stood silently on my windowsill, just like Karu once had, its body catching the pale blue of the moonlight in a way that made it look both impossibly fragile and eerily eternal. But unlike Karu, this one didn't hesitate, didn't hide, didn't watch from a distance in caution. It stepped forward, climbed up onto the glass pane with precise, deliberate grace, and fixed its large black eyes directly on mine, not with curiosity, not with fear, but with something that felt disturbingly close to judgment. Then, in a movement that should have been impossible at that scale, it raised one slender arm and projected a crystalline pulse from its chest. Not light exactly, and not sound either, but a kind of compressed thought that pressed directly against my consciousness. I didn't hear a voice. I didn't read words. I simply knew what it was saying. Unit Karu has expired. Mission continuation authorized. Unit Vilek now active. I didn't know whether to feel grief or dread. Karu, for all his alien nature, had become something close to a companion, strange, silent, endlessly observant, but somehow gentle. This one was colder, sharper, more exact in its every movement and presence. It wasn't here to learn anymore. It was here to complete something. So I asked, barely able to breathe, "What is your mission?" The response came again, without pause or tone or emphasis, yet somehow thunderous in its weight. Observation. Containment. Evaluation of escalation pattern. Escalation pattern. Those weren't words I wanted to hear. I asked again, more urgently now, escalation of what? And Vilek, that was its name, I knew now, blinked once, then pulsed again, not just into my mind this time but deeper, as if pushing into parts of me I didn't even realize were open to intrusion. Of you. Of your kind. The words landed with a clarity that didn't leave room for interpretation. Karu had never been a random visitor. He wasn't here by mistake or by curiosity. He was part of a surveillance lattice spanning solar systems. Thousands of microscopic scouts seeded across civilizations deemed emergent. Karu had been the first of many. His death wasn't an error. It was simply a transition point in their protocol. According to Vilek, their species didn't dominate through weapons or warfare. They didn't destroy threats. They monitored them. They studied growth patterns, entropy curves, cognitive evolution rates. And when a species reached a certain critical point, a moment where their rate of environmental consumption, technological aggression, and self-delusion surpassed their capacity for restraint, they activated what Vilek called the delay directive. It sounded harmless, but it wasn't. They didn't erase civilizations. They slowed them, subtly, invisibly. Failed satellite launches, endless political gridlock, misinformation loops, artificial acceleration of social collapse. They understood that the fastest way to disarm a threat wasn't through destruction. It was through inertia. We weren't just under observation. We were being assessed for containment. Over the next 3 days, I did everything I could to change Vilek's perception. I showed him data, yes, but also music, stories, photos of grief and forgiveness, human moments of beauty and bravery that had no economic value and no evolutionary incentive, only meaning. I showed him a video of a man jumping into a frozen lake to save a dog. I played a recording of a child singing to a dying grandmother. I read aloud the final letters written by astronauts who knew they weren't coming home. Vilek watched. He didn't respond. But I could feel something shift, not in him, but in the way the silence between us began to stretch, as if it needed more time. And then, on the morning of the 4th day, he was gone. There was no farewell. No shutdown sequence. No message. Just a faint indentation in the dust beside my computer, and a single glowing sequence left blinking faintly on my screen. An alien glyph I couldn't translate, followed by a simple phrase rendered in raw binary. Probability shift registered. Delay adjusted. Reseeding initiated. What it meant, I still don't fully know. All I know is that the signal, the one Karu first traced inside my toaster, the one that had followed me for years, it's stronger now. Not just here, not just in my devices, but everywhere. My friends' phones stutter on the same strange rhythm. I've seen GPS systems redirect people down non-existent roads. I've seen power flickers move across entire neighborhoods like synchronized breath. And sometimes when I close my eyes, I still feel something brushing against my mind. Watching, waiting, perhaps even wondering. They haven't left. They're not coming. They're already here.